Launch day, do buckaroos. How the heck are you? I am Tom the Whiskey Whisperer for the purposes of this video anyway. Let me get something fixed real quick here. There we go. Now we're in business. Anyway, so it's going to be very similar to the video I did earlier. I just kind of did a rehash of the same cocktails. One I used a different product in, but this one's going to be more or less the same. I just kind of adjusted some quantities here. I've got the Yakida rum, 80 proof, local to me here, using the Yakida glass, as you can see. So I've got basically uh, basil lemon mojito going on. I got fresh mint from our backyard. I did a lemon basil simple syrup, added a fresh basil leaf for a garnish, as you can see, and then just topped it with a little bit of club soda. Get that in there so you can see it properly. There we go. And cilantro. Oh, damn, that's nice. I just changed up the liquor a little bit on the second cocktail, but it's more or less the same either, or same also. I want to keep it similar. I want to use the ingredients that I have on hand. That's what I try to tell folks. A lot of folks think you need to get a whole bunch of this, that, or the other. Buy things as you need them. Bitters, if something looks good, buy it. But when you go about making your cocktails, work with what you got, man. Once you've made that decision, say, okay, maybe I don't have this, but what happens if I use this instead? And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Quite frankly, you never know. But sometimes you find those great cocktails by mistake, or great recipes in general, whether it's cocktails or food. Sometimes by having to improvise or forcing yourself to improvise, you come up with something that was much better than the original. Mercy. Sláinte. Did an early happy hour. About 2, I did a video, and I want to wait a little bit, then I'll do another one. But technically, we're still in that happy hour kind of space. Depending on where you're at, we're just at a different place, a little different backdrop for happy hour number 2. I mean, you guys got to learn where everybody's happy hour is and hit them for happy hour. Some will do like 2 to 5, some 3 to 6, some 4 to 7. So find out where those places are and exploit that. I remember back in California, though, a lot of places would do this. Is back in the 80s, so it may not be anything like this anymore. But a lot of places would do a staggered happy hour. Some would do like a noon to 3, or a noon to 2, or 1 to 3, and then do like a 5 to 7. Or some would even do a later happy hour, like 10 to midnight. It's usually the really dive bars that would do that late happy hour, like 10 to midnight, because 10 to midnight was when younger folks were going to the clubs, right? That's when the clubs were happening. They didn't get going until after 10, so a lot of folks would do those dive bars for the early happy hour, right? The 4 to 7 or whatever they might do, and then head out. But once all those folks were gone, then you get some of the older folks that aren't going to those nightclubs, and they might be there for that late night happy hour, you see? You got to know your audience. Happy hours seem to be a little bit different here in this neck of the woods. I noticed that when I first got here. I noticed a lot of places didn't even do happy hours when I first got here, or they were just kind of strange. Somewhere at an actual hour. So what the hell is that? Happy hour should be at least 2, sometimes 3 or 4 hours. And most of the places I used to go to when I first got to town here all those many years ago were gone, man. All those great landmarks are gone. One of the big nightclubs, probably the biggest nightclub in the area, was the Townhouse, and they've been gone for decades now. The big rock hangout was Ramones, and it's been gone for quite some time. The country hangout was Top Rail, and it's been gone for a while as well. Those were the 3 biggies way back when. Townhouse was the biggest venue of the three. It had two big bars on each side, a great big stage, and a band that had been there since the beginning of time. They'd been there forever, the Lefty Brothers. They were good. They were a good cover band, good and solid, a good middle of the road band, right? They did some country, they did some rock and roll, but mostly just middle of the road rock and roll, right? They might do some Eagles, might do some Seeger, but they weren't doing anything, on the edge of any genre. To be honest with you, they were a good, likable band. They were good, solid musicians. I like to go to Ramones, was the big rock joint at the time. Can't remember the name of the bands now I used to see, to be honest with you. It was a long time ago. But that's where I got to hear the music I wanted to hear, right? The big 80s and early 90s rock of the time, those cover bands. But the atmosphere was a little rougher than, say, the Townhouse. Everybody's pretty polished over at the Townhouse, right? Everything was middle of the road, from the band to the folks that went there. Yeah, a lot of sport coats, uh, a lot of cowboy boots and Florsheim shoes, or that kind of thing. Yeah, there was nothing you're not gonna. Everything was very milk toast, very milk toast over at the Townhouse. But if you wanted to get a little rough there, then you had Ramones, man. That Ramones was for those of us that might still have Capizios. Oh, mercy. Or studded wristbands, those of us that were left over from a bygone era. And of course, there are places in between all of that. I like to go to the Shady was this kind of really old school restaurant known for their prime rib, but they had this bar off to the side. In the evenings, it would become a piano bar. Only in the evenings would it become a piano bar. So there was a little period of time in the 90s where my sister was in town, as well as my brother. My mom was still able to get around at that time, and we'd all go there for a couple 3 hours, 2 or 3 times a week. Hear some old cheesy songs, sing a little bit, get into some conversation. Wish I could remember the name of that piano player. He was good. He was very much uh, very far to the right then. And him and I would get into some conversations from time to time. But the funny thing is that even though we were almost polar opposites in a lot of ways, we would have fun, engaging conversations that usually didn't devolve into, calling each other names or hating each other at the end of the night. It was all in fun. Uh, it's just a shame things can't be done that way anymore. Wish I could remember that guy's name though. I just remember there was two women, I should say, that were always there, and I never put it together at the time that they always had specific makeup on and hair, and I'm thinking maybe they weren't just there listening to the piano. I don't know for a fact one way or the other. I just know some stories that I've heard over the years. Not making judgment, just 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 an observation, if you will. Just noticing sometimes they disappear for a while and then come back to the bar later. Oh, anyway, it's a different time. I miss that place. The Key Largo was another one of those places. I think, trying to remember, Key Largo was. I don't know. You had a lot of different acts. So I trying to remember who I saw there, but as far as cover acts, but there wasn't really one specific genre because I saw so many different bands there, and they used to do a lot of karaoke there too. but everything's gone now. Springfield is about as homogenous as a town can get. Yeah, I mean we got all the usual suspects, and we don't really have a lot of original character anymore. Most of those places are gone. Of course, I think most towns are missing those anymore. Mom and pop places have chased everything out. When I talk to friends about the places that I used to go to in California, my friends that are still out there, all those places are gone. The Woodstock, Radio City, they're gone. Joshua's, the big rock club at the time, is gone. So things just change. Everything evolves and becomes something else. We used to go to Joshua's Trees a lot. They did. It was mostly kind of. It was MTV rock at the time. Let's say that. Sometimes they were mostly on the rock side, but nothing crazy, right? You heard a lot of the usual suspects that were big at the time in there, but they were the big. They had a couple different bars. One big bar up front, smaller bar on the back end, a nice size stage, a couple different areas where one big area where you can view the stage, one kind of off to the side. Then out of the bar area that I was talking about earlier, they were really interesting. I know one of my stories was though, or story I have to tell is that I had a cousin move from South Dakota, and he wanted to visit there. So we'd go out there every once in a while. We started going there more and more with some friends of mine, more rock friends, and he was just kind of short haired, button down kind of guy. Myself and my friends were very much long hairs, rock and roll, so we were dressed appropriately or semi-appropriately, as the case may be. But anyway, I wasn't quite 21 at the time, they carded everybody there. They give you this wristband, so I'm sitting there with a friend and my cousin there, and I've got my wristband on. I'm clearly not 21, but they chased everybody out. And it was after hours because we got talking with the bartender and one of the bouncers and I think one of the managers at the time. We got talking about music and a whole lot of things. I was giving them my background and you know talking about the ridiculousness of the drinking age. My dad had always said, my dad who had fought in World War II, had said it was ridiculous that somebody can go fight for their country but can't come back and have a beer. Anyway, it was this long conversation. We had a good night and said good night and left. And so we went back a week later, and the one guy was back there, or he was, playing his bouncer role and checking everybody's ID. And I was in front of my cousin was right behind me. I was in front of him, and so I went to grab my wallet to pull my ID out, and he says, "No, I remember you from last week," and he stamped me for 21. Now he knew good and well who I was. Knew good and well I wasn't 21 because if he looked at my ID, he'd have to hit me. So, "Oh, I remember you. Well, we go way back," and he hit me for 21. And so my cousin who's right behind me starts to walk in right there. The guy says, "Oh, wait a minute, I need to see your ID." Knowing that it was the three of us having a long conversation. He knew my cousin every bit as well as he knew me. And my cousin never let me forget that story. I got carded. Yes, you did. Funny thing is, every time that guy was there, he wouldn't card, and I'm telling you, they carded everybody. You could be 100 years old in a line, they would card you, and he would never card me. It was the craziest thing. All that reminiscing, I took a little longer to drink this. I need to knock this back and get drink number two. Yeah, I got talking about how the places here have gone. It kind of reminded me that, gosh, every place I used to in California is gone too. There might be some of the Hollywood clubs still left. I'm not sure. You used to go to the Whiskey, the Troubadour, Madame Wong's. I think the Whiskey and Troubadour still exists. I don't think Madame Wong's does. That was a real big one at the time for showcase clubs back in the day. I know the Golden Bear was gone before I left California. That was a big showcase club for a while. I'll be right back. But I don't know. I was talking with a friend the other day out here. There was a big showcase club when I first got to town called the Regency Showcase, and they went out of business, been back in business, and kind of in name only. Kind of a half dozen times over the years, to be honest. But they never can seem to make it work for one reason or another. I just don't know that there's a need for showcase clubs, as sad as that is for me to say, is people don't really feel about music as they did back in let's go farther, 60s, 70s, and 80s. People feel differently about it. You don't have this raw emotion and energy like kids like me did back in the 80s in Southern California when that whole rock scene was exploding. I mean, I was lucky enough to see a lot of bands in showcase clubs either before or just as they were getting record deals. Bands like Rat, Great White, for instance, Black and Blue, a lot of bands that didn't get super big. Legs Diamond. I mean, there's so much great music happening, but I don't know that there's that much excitement for that sort of thing now. A lot of folks aren't people that are into music aren't forming garage bands anymore, right? They're making tapes or they're going on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or whatever social media they get into. They're performing stuff or I don't know that they're forming bands anymore like they used to. I'm certainly not seeing as a whole musicianship like I used to see. I'm not saying folks buy the cheapest drum set or guitar or keyboard they could buy and gradually work up the food chain um, to become better musicians and form bands and get with friends and write songs. I'm not seeing a lot of this anymore. I'm not saying it's gone completely. I'm just saying it just doesn't exist like it used to, especially with shows like American Idol and The Voice and all these other, pseudo talent shows on TV, that they really encourage people not to do things the hard way. They encourage people not to pay your dues. They encourage people to have that quick. I always get frustrated, especially on American Idol, when people say, what do I can't remember the exact question, but it's always something like, well, what's your goal or what do you want to do? And the answer is, I want to be a rock star. That answer always pisses me off to no end, because if all you want is, to cash in and make money, well, you're doing the wrong thing to start with. I just want to hear someone say, I want to be a musician and I want to find a way to be a musician the rest of my life. And there's a lot of ways to do that that don't involve being rich and or famous or selling your soul for that matter. In fact, I could certainly make an argument that the greatest talents out there, even today, aren't the ones making millions. Probably some of the best musicians there are in your city, in your state, are musicians that you've probably never heard of unless you're into certain sounds. I mean, look to see if you've got any studios in town. I'm guessing your studio musicians are probably better than anybody you've ever heard of, anybody you've ever bought an album from or paid money to go see. Those musicians have much more talent, but you're never going to hear their names. Is it fair? No, nothing about life is fair. And that's just the way it is. I mean, there's some great voices out there, singers. There's some great voices out there. I think that's kind of one of those fallacies. So if you work hard, you do this, you do that, you're going to be rich and famous. Well, some of the best musicians, some of the best singers out there are folks you're never going to hear their names. You might have even seen them on a cruise ship or in a small club in your neck of the woods. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's a difference between wanting to be rich and famous, be a rock star per se, or just wanting to do what you do. And I don't really have any respect for those that just want to be a rock star. If that's what you want, then you're in it for all the wrong reasons. You have to be in it for the music, for the love of the music. And I think that's what happens to a lot of these folks is they get in it for all the wrong reasons. They get made famous for all the wrong reasons, and then shit happens to them. I mean, I don't want anything bad to happen to anybody. Don't get me wrong, but But you've got folks where you've got people behind the scenes making stupid people famous, and then wondering why things go awry. Anyway, so I've got a version of that. When you drink and stuff, I've got a version of the lemon basil splash, which is the I'm using the wood hat bourbon for this incarnation, my lemon basil simple syrup. And the only thing, the big difference between this and what I had last night, because I used this yesterday to make this cocktail, was like yesterday I just did it straight up. I got it chilled, but I didn't leave any ice in the glass. But the recipe for the lemon basil splash was just to it was served on the rocks. So, anyways, that's why I thought I'd use it with this whiskey for this video, because that's the whiskey I made it with yesterday. And just serving it with a little ice this time is all. And I got to tell you, to be honest with you, I do prefer it straight up because I'm just not an ice guy. The ice seems to just get away from me. Just not an ice guy, man. There are certain genres of music that I preferred over others and still prefer. Oh, I forgot to put my garnish in there. I just realized. Let me drop my garnish in there and make the drink look pretty. Make it look pretty. No, I don't need that garnish in there. That just gets in the way too. I wasn't a fan of grunge, to be honest with it, because it just seems so whiny. It seems so self-indulgent. I mean, the lyrics, especially for bands like Nirvana, it just seems so whiny, so self-indulgent, so narcissistic. And I think the folks that identify with bands like that are that they're whiny, they're self-indulgent, they're narcissistic. That's why they identified with those lyrics. I'm not saying there wasn't any skill involved. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying I just didn't like them. I think their importance in the music scene since then has been greatly exaggerated. But again, that's all opinion. I just wasn't a fan. I did like a lot of the party antics of bands in the 70s and 80s because that's what I was about back then. But I will admit there are a lot of bands that I listened to back in the 70s and 80s. When I go back and listen to their stuff now, it doesn't resonate with me the same way. Why? Because I'm older. I'm not 20, 21, 22 years old wanting to get laid and party all night. No, those songs resonated with you for a reason. They were who you were at that time. So I am. It just make me wonder about folks that haven't evolved past that. Right? If you still haven't evolved past who you were in high school, I think that's definitely a red flag. The other side of that, there are bands that I might not have paid a lot of attention to for one reason or another. That when I listen to now, they do kind of resonate with me for different reasons. It was a big music scene in California back then, though, man, because I saw a lot of bands in concert with my friends, and tickets were doled out in a different way back then, right? You had various ticket agencies. You had to stand in line at the event, at the arena where the event was going to be held, a certain, sometimes it was several months in front of it. Um, but ticket agencies didn't have a bigger chance or a better chance of getting tickets than you did. Everybody had to get there early, and then at some point they would come out and give you a random number, and that number would get called, and blah blah blah. You had a chance to buy up to so many tickets. So there was usually, it was at that time, if I remember right, it was 6 tickets. There were 6 of us, and the deal was always whoever got the best draw would buy all 6 tickets. But then those crafty guys, those ticket agencies would always find out who got that best draw, then go to that person and say, okay, I will give you X, you buy these, I will give you the money to buy those 6 tickets, plus I will give you X amount of dollars afterwards. You know, you give me those tickets, I give you this money, everybody wins. I would never do that because fuck them. Well, I mean, it's not that I didn't like money at the time, especially being a youngster that probably could have used some of the money. It was more about I wanted those tickets. If I got the best draw I ever got, to be honest, it was third row center for Blue Oyster Cult Rainbow. But I mean, I had some pretty good draws for other shows that we saw over the years. And I never sell my tickets, man. I wanted those tickets. I got them for a freaking reason. But yeah, Blue Oyster Cult Rainbow was a great show. One of the folks we went with, Rainbow, Richie Blackmore has always been known to have a bit of an ego. Most great musicians do. But how they determined it was a dual headlining tour, and how they determined who played first was whose ever album sales were best in that area at that particular time. Well, it just so happened BOC had the bigger sales. They were the last band up. The rumor was that Richie was not happy with this at all, and they were playing 2 nights. We were there for the first night. So anyway, they get to the end of the show and they go off stage because they're coming back for an encore. So they go off stage. Everybody goes crazy. Yeah, it was a great show. They're amazing. And I will tell you, watching Richie Blackmore on stage, there are some more showful guitarists out there, without a doubt. But watching Richie Blackmore play was an amazing treat. I mean, he just walked around, never looked at his guitar like he was walking around his living room. I mean, he just made it look so effortless. It was just amazing watching him play. But anyway, they come back for their encore, and he's got a different guitar on, and they do their, couple, 3 songs, whatever it was, and he whips his guitar off and throws it out into the audience. Well, what do you think's going to happen? Well, there was a freaking frenzy, man. One of the folks we came with got his hand on it and sliced his thumb from about here to here, so he had to be taken out for a while. And there was some mayhem that ensued, that delayed the opening for BOC, which, in my particular opinion, was the point of the whole thing. I think Richie Blackmore got his panties in such a wad that he just wanted to delay BOC from coming on stage. But anyway, that being said, as great as Rainbow was, they were no match for Blue Oyster Cult. Blue Oyster Cult was just so amazing. I mean, from Eric Bloom to Buck Dharma to from Burning for You to Godzilla to everything they played, it was just amazing, man. They were just it was just an incredible show. But for night 2, they wouldn't let. They told Richie he could not do that again, right? So for night 2, he didn't chuck a guitar out there. But it was clear. I mean, it was kind of clear that he was a little pissed off about the whole thing, and it is, I'm guessing, of course, but I really think that's why he did it, was to make sure that the opening for Blue Oyster Cult was delayed, so maybe they couldn't play as long as they wanted to, or to maybe get them off their game a little bit. But whatever the reason was, or if there was one, the truth was that Blue Oyster Cult was clearly the better live act. Are they better musicians? Were the songs better? Well, that's up to everybody to decide. But for me, I mean, there was just no comparing the shows. The dynamics of Blue Oyster Cult was just beyond compare. They were just amazing. Aerosmith was my favorite band as a kid, so I got to see him for the first time in '82, right after, right, yeah, unfortunately, yeah, after during that period of time when Joe Perry was gone and Brad Whitford was gone. So they had guitar players Jimmy Crespo and Rick DeFay. And quite frankly, I think Rick DeFay is a better guitar player than Jimmy Crespo, but nevertheless, it was a good show. It really was. Pat Travers opened up. It was good, but it wasn't the Aerosmith everybody wanted to see. But Aerosmith reformed again and played in 1984 at the Greek Theater. The opening act was Black and Blue, another great, labeled hair band that really wasn't, but nevertheless, they were a great band. Kind of a good show too. But seeing them at the Greek in '84 was amazing because they got they had that mojo back, right? They finally got back together. They had Joe Perry, they had Brad Woodford, all the originals were back together. You feel like they had that energy. Supposedly they were all on the straight and narrow at that time. I mean, I don't know. But that was the scuttlebutt that everybody was clean and sober. They were playing well. I mean, that show was insane. And I saw them again a couple years later at the Forum when they were back on top again after permanent vacations. The odd thing about that show was the opening act. Not that they were bad, is it didn't seem to make sense at the time. It was the Divinals. And the Divinals kind of evolved over the years, but this was before I touched myself. Yeah, this is before that. They had more of a new wave kind of sound and tempo back then. So it didn't really seem to make sense touring with Aerosmith, but nevertheless, it was a very good show. But anyways, but as I get older, I look at concerts a little bit different. I love watching. I love going to smaller venues. I like going to seeing the up and comers. I like going to. That's why the mid '90s into the late '90s into the early 2000s or mid 2000s even. I used to go to a well-known blues club out here called Nathan P. Murphy's and see acts like, Tommy Castro, Walter Trout, Joe Bonamassa when he was first coming up, J.D. Simo, just a lot of great acts on their way up because they were sort of somewhere between blues and classic rock, right? They were playing the sound I wanted to hear, and they had that great attitude. And I saw bands like Eric Sardinas was another one of those, and Chubby Carrier. Trying to think who else I saw out there. Little Ed and the Imperials. Just so many over the years, man. I just loved supporting those venues. Over my birthday this year, a couple months back in May, like right on my birthday, as a matter of fact. Saxon and Uriah Heep. I just saw the other day where Biff Byford turned 73. I'm telling you, that guy has not lost a step. The voice may not be quite as high as it was 40 years ago, but he does not miss a note. I'm telling you that show was amazing. Saxon was flawless. And I liked Saxon back in the 80s. I did, but I wasn't that huge super fan. I thought they were good, but I mean, I wasn't, I wasn't in love with the band, right? It wasn't a must see like bands like Iron Maiden for me. I liked them, so when they played this, just okay, I want to go. Uh, and they were beyond amazing. I gotta tell you, I would see that anytime I get a chance to see Saxon again, I will go because that show was just that incredible. And it wasn't just that Biff Byford didn't miss a note, which he did not. It was that everything was amazing. The bass player was a beast. The guitar players were incredible. I mean, even at their ages now, they were insane watching that. I mean, hell, I'm arthritic as hell, and I'm 15 younger than most of these guys. So it was just great. And then Sax or Uriah Heep came on, and they were great as well. I will tell you, I did like Uriah Heep a lot. They were great, but Saxon resonated more with me because of the era. However, the other side of that is that I would see Uriah Heep again as well. Both bands were just so amazing. If I get the opportunity to see either again, I would definitely go. They were amazing. If you get a chance to see either, I could not recommend either band highly enough. They were amazing. Nathan P. Murphy's, I mentioned that club earlier. It's kind of Well, they're a landmark here. I mean, they're legendary here in these parts. The bands he's had play out of there are amazing. Some of them gone on to great things. I mentioned Joe Bonamassa earlier. He's had Maynard Ferguson there. I mean, so many great acts over the years. And a couple weeks ago, they had a band I had never heard of before. And Bob had sent me a message. Dr. Bob sent me a message. So I went out there. It's Jack Healy Band. And I got to tell you, I wasn't familiar with these guys at all, but it was just an awesome show. And these are people I love giving my money to, folks that care that you're out there, and not folks that necessarily they deserve to squeeze you for every cent. So no, when the Rolling Stones came to town, I'm not giving those assholes my money. Fuck them. I'm not paying an exorbitant amount of money to see a band that no longer gives a rat's ass about anybody but themselves. I'm not going to do it. I'm not saying there's not some great tunes. I'm not saying they didn't put on a great show. I'm just saying I'm not doing it. These aren't the people that I want to support anymore. I want to support the people that really give a rat's ass about what they're doing and care about the people coming to see them and are grateful that folks came out to see them. One thing that was interesting about Uriah Heep, it kind of goes into what I just said, is they have a new album out. But he acknowledged the fact that most folks were coming out there to listen to the hits. He says, we've got a new album out. We've got a brand new album out. And I want to play you just 3 songs from that album. I promise you I will get to those hits that you all know. But I want to play 3 songs from that album. Is that fair? And everybody said, yeah, sounds fair to me. I mean, hell, it's your say. You can do whatever you want. But, you know, but I thought that was a great gesture. You know, they played 3 songs. And all 3 songs were great, to be honest with you. I loved them all. But I think a lot of bands forget that folks aren't necessarily always coming out to see that last album, but that's what they're touring for. They're touring to promote that album. So when somebody like that comes out and says, "Look, and I got this out there, but I know you. In all honesty, I know you came to hear these certain songs. I promise you, I'll get to them. But can I play these 3 or play these 4 or 5, whatever? I mean, hell, he could have said 5. He could have said 7. To be honest with you, everybody would have been okay. Everybody heard the songs they wanted to hear. The 3 new songs were great. Saxon was very similar too. He said, "We got a new song I want to play for you," but they played the hits. They played the tunes you wanted to hear. You know, you heard the songs you came there to listen to. So, and I love that attitude that they understood why folks were there. And but all of us were there because we love these bands, right? We appreciate the music, so we were okay with hearing the new stuff. We kind of expected it, but it was just sometimes you go to shows, you want to hear some of those hits. They want to play 10 songs from their new album, which 2 or 3 might be good. Play a half dozen of their hits and let everybody be happy with that after they've paid a whole bunch of money. And to be honest with you, the tickets for this event, I got a seat right on the aisle, 3 rows from the stage, for about $50. Now I did pay more than that because I also bought the VIP ticket. It was my birthday; I deserved it. But for just the seat there, it was I think with tax, it was just a hair over $50. That's not bad. I don't mind paying that. I'm just not going to pay 500. I'm not going to pay 600. I'm not going to pay 700. I'm not going to pay 900 or $1,000 for bands that don't appreciate that I'm there or why I'm there or why I spent that money. Because the people that are spending that kind of money don't care either. They're not there because they love the music. They're there because they have the money. Anyway, before I can irritate anybody else this evening, I'm going to sign off for this particular video because I've talked for quite a while, man. Yeah, you've talked for a long time. I get carried away when I talk music. I do. A lot of this, my music tastes are very eclectic. I started out being very much a hard rock into that metal era, but metal became something different than I was interested in as time went on. I mean, I loved the early metal, the Black Sabbath, but most of what I listened to at the time would be more hard rock these days. You know, I love Maiden, Saxon, I mentioned earlier, but bands like Blue Oyster Cult have, you know, kind of softened over the years. And I love a lot of bands that paved the way for other bands, like Humble Pie. Not necessarily a fan favorite, but if you know anything about that band, you'll know there's a lot of bands out there that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Humble Pie. Bands like Mata Hoople, for instance, very, very early glam. It was glam before it had a name. That's why I don't know that they were actually correctly labeled as glam, but that's where they were. But if it wasn't for bands like Mata Hoople, we wouldn't have T Rex or a whole lot of other bands that came after that. And I also loved a lot of jazz. I loved a lot of prog players like Alan Holdsworth that kind of gets forgotten about these days. In my opinion, the best rock and roll bass player is Billy Sheehan, who never, other than those couple years he spent with David Lee Roth, really wasn't in any specific band. He just played with everybody, man. He was just one of those guys that everybody knew was the best. So he's the guy, if you listen to whatever heavy metal album you listened to in the 80s, he's probably the session guy that was taking the place of the bass player in the band. Anyway, I'm Tom the Whiskey Whisperer, Whiskey Evangelist, prolific whiskey drinker, perfect air wisdom, all around good guy, launcher.